Hello, everybody. It is me, Little Wild Thing, also known as Lydia, to some of you who don't know me. When you do, you'll know why I'm called Little Wild Thing. Got quite an extraordinary life with many experiences, and I go live once a year for my mother. On March 27th, my mother committed suicide, and I ended up growing up in the Florida foster care system. And my love with her, for her, with or without her on earth is so intense and immense that every single day I am experiencing what it would be like with or without her. And the influence of having a mother in your life is everything. And I hope to live to be 103 so I can be with my children as long as I can on this earth, because parents are everything. And because I experienced what it was like to lose my parents, I feel like I've been from the dark side of the moon. So I can share a little bit and maybe put some light where there are shadows. And I know that for sure when it comes to mental illness, that there is just no way out when you end your life. And light shatters darkness. So if we can shed light or have a new perspective or a lesson or horizon to bring ourselves to, then it's important to share stories, because what I get from you, you get from me. And my story is no more important or blessed. It's just an experience. So, anyway, welcome. Hi. It's so nice to get back here and start speaking. I published Little Wild Thing right here in 2015. And I toured this book for 3 years before I went on hiatus. I was speaking nationally. I made 3 documentaries where I was a guest speaker and become a mentor for PBS, a guest speaker for them. And all of it was incredible and wonderful. And it gave me a training ground to know what my purpose is and that I need to get back on the platform and start speaking again. So yesterday I was reminded that today was the 27th, and I almost chickened out of this in a way that is odd, because I have done this for 20 years plus since my mother has died, and I've never failed once to write her a letter or to speak publicly on the day of her anniversary. So to be afraid of it after all this time kind of blew me away. And so I thought, well, this is just the perfect time when in fear to break it. So with that said, I am just going to read the first page of Little Wild Thing to start us. And within this, I wrote, if we no longer hide the truth, silence can no longer be hidden. If what is hidden has light upon it, we can thoroughly examine what went wrong. Once we understand, solutions can be made to make it right. There is beauty to be found within the darkness that invades our souls, but not one person deserves to suffer for too long. Be brave, oh so brave. Dig deep and face the pain, for it is the only way out. May your heart heal from the rips, and may your tears fall like shimmering crystals, creating a new horizon where cups of your truth are ready to be sipped, where pain sprouts into laughter, where loneliness is filled with adventure, where your heart grows with love, where all efficiencies are fed by the bright glowing sun. And I wrote that not thinking twice about what the opening page was going to be for Little Wild Thing, because I got 6 banker boxes of my files when I was 16 years old, and it had all the documents from lawyers, teachers, doctors, my, guardian ad litem, to neighbors, police officers. And then it also had my childhood diaries, and the night and day of the two of them did not match up. And the truth of the matter is everybody was partying, everybody was doing drugs, everybody had some sense of a confusion, a disorder, or a mental illness in my family. And when you put those three things together with trauma and abuse that is unhealed, abuse is happening right in front of your face all day long. And you're sweeping it under the rug with every way to not acknowledge that this is actually happening. So I became a black sheep of my family, and they did not want to have a child in the family that was a child of mental illness that was declared with paranoid schizophrenia. So I became a black sheep after my mother committed suicide. I was put right back in foster care, and my family completely abandoned me because mental illness is fucking scary. There's not a picture to it. You think that you know crazy, and then you don't. You think it's somebody doing pills for maybe the doctor, and then maybe it's the alcohol, but you don't. It could be spiritual. It has so much to do with the environment and culture that you're growing up with. And I thought, I'm going to take my files and diaries that has my mother's mental illness documents all the way up to her suicide letter, and I'm going to put it in this book. So that's what I did, and it took me a while after publishing it and speaking about it to realize the effects long after she's gone of what they were doing to me, and not knowing about life as what it's like to grow up as a girl to a woman. That's been my major concern for me. And so I went through realms of every drug, every thing you can possibly think of, from medical drugs all the way to ayahuasca in Peru, trying to study the spiritual warfare that I saw my mother go through. I wanted to understand how she got to the bottom of the sea and she didn't come back up again. So I think that with that, I found that we are confused on many things because of three things. And I had these ideas that popped up today, and I thought, well, I'm just going to say what they are. And the first one is that I grew up in religion. And in many religions, if you commit suicide, you are told you're not coming back and you're going to suffer. And when I was told that I was actually in a foster home, a Christian home at 10, I was told that I would never see her again. And then when I saw What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, who goes to save his wife at the end of the earth to be with her, to bring her beauty, to bring her back into the light, I thought, well, God, you created the mind and imagination and the will of life. Is she really gone? Like, forever? Like, that just seemed really harsh. And it hurt because I just thought, if there's a will, there's a way. And I wanted to find my mother. And so I continued through my research in my life of trying to find her. So religion was the first confusion on people really trying to understand what was happening. And it leads into the second idea of Kay Redfield Jamison, who wrote a book about suicide. And she talks about how it was like the 1600s and people were buried outside of the community because they thought if you had rain and it hit the coffin, that disease would go on into the community. It's like, whoa, okay. Well, people are being told that the Holocaust no longer existed, or that we didn't land on the moon. Like, where are we going to be now with that? Like, this is real. It's happening. And I saw my mother suffer every day with paranoid schizophrenia, let alone having to try to take care of kids, have a job, run a house. If your community does not understand what suicide is, without putting bars on it like religion or other aspects, we're in trouble if we keep thinking that it's something you could get in the water. So it's been racking my brain in these ideas of things, which is going to bring me to number 3, is my experience with ayahuasca in Peru. I spent almost a month there doing ceremony and really deeply spiritually going to God. And in my vision, I literally was in my mother's belly. I could feel her hold me from the outside. I could see light. And then when I had actually came out of my vision, I was talking to my shaman, and he said that he had seen her and that she was okay. At the time, I was pissed off. It's like, oh yeah, you're like hanging out wherever you're at. Somebody's saying you're okay. Well, I'm fucking not okay. Like I'm still suffering over my love for you, my want to heal mental illness for you. And then I thought, well, if religion says you can't see her and the spiritual realm says that you can see her, and I haven't heard God say one thing or the other, I'm going to try that. And I did. And I had an amazing, beautiful vision with my mother. And the basics of it was that she had so much within her that her body could not contain the darkness that was filling. And she had to exhume all of it. It was like brown smoke and black smoke was coming up from her body in my vision. And it leads me to think about what led my mom to suicide, because she loved me very much. Our love was immense. They wrote about it in my files, and it was unspeakable how much her and I loved each other. She never would have left me on this earth without a plan or an idea if she didn't think that it wasn't going to be what could help. She did not feel that she could be on earth without her children, without her life. And that's why foster care is so incredibly important when they split family and children apart, because they need the support. They're not criminals, and we're putting our mentally ill into jail and taking away their art therapy, which is what happened to my mother. And she had no release. She had no church. She had no perspective outside of her own horizon to see that life was beyond her own perspective. And we all have to trust our own perspective. It's what keeps us in our human condition and our faith and what we do, our purpose. But when that gets blurred, whatever that is, you may say it is drugs, you can say it's abuse, you could say it's split personality, you could blame it on video games to the government. I'm not really quite sure how you want to pinpoint it, because in my aspect, I don't. My mother was in a spiritual warfare. She did not know the difference between night and day anymore. She did not know where God was, her home was. She couldn't dress herself. She became in a delusion. Now, when it comes to that, there's the point where they put them in hospitals, and she'd been to so many hospitals. Instead of the hospital, she went to the foster care office looking to have a visitation. And she said that her bones were breaking and she was bleeding and she was holding herself. And so within that, they called mental health on her instead of any other solution. A social worker saying, I'm sorry, let me give you a bandage. Let me see where you're bleeding. Sometimes it's okay to be in that delusion with them to help them with whatever they are spiritually working on. Maybe they don't even have the language. Maybe they have to split into some kind of ulterior world. And what I'm saying with this is that we are so beautiful. All of us, we're all here with this precious life, not knowing why we are floating in the universe. But we do know that we come from a source of light that somehow hits this egg and sperm that creates you in the belly, in the womb of your mother. I know, and I remember wanting her. Like, in my experience on earth, I wanted her. And I know that she wanted me, so I know that, like, there's some kind of beautiful conduit transfusion of energy where we shoot through the stars and we end up in the belly of a human that is our mother. And I wish that we could have saved her, because in science, like the decade of her mental illness was null and void. I mean, test tube babies were made. They found out about the AIDS virus. Then we were shooting to the moon. And mental illness was just so confusing, and it still is. And we still are having this idea of what to do with it. And because it was my mother, I can't stop thinking about the fact that my love was so grand with her. And even though there was trauma and abuse and she left me and I became an orphan, she wanted more for me. And I want to give an example of that and what mental illness is and what it sounds like. And so in my book, I read my mother's suicide letter out in writing, of course. And so I haven't read it in a while, and I thought that I would just do that to give a picture, an idea of somebody's last written words on what it's like to say, I see nothing else. Which is why, again, in the beginning, I said we have to spread the stories and the light because they cannot see. And my mother, if she were alive today, she would not be able to deny the work that I have done for her because it's unconditional and I'll never stop. So I changed the words, of course, of names in here, but this is my mother's suicide letter, and she died on March 27th, 1991. So she said, I love you, Willie, which is my aunt, most deeply in my life, that I got to share some good, great times. Dear Willie and Donald, which is my aunt's husband, my aunt and uncle. Willie, thanks for being there. Thank you so much for opening up your hearts and the love I see in both of you to share and give to my one and only daughter, Michelle, which is my biological name from my adopted name. And in parentheses, she said, always I loved. The reason I finally decided to give my daughter to you, Willie and Donald, my daughter deserves better. She will be with a well-loved and devoted family that I believe can love Michelle as their own. Plus, with family, I don't want Michelle torn away from family. Every time I thought I had a good life for her, it only made it worse. When me and Bo, my stepdad, broke up, it tore my family apart. To have my family back again, that's something I can never have again. And it's certainly something I'll never have again. And it is my true one desire to give Michelle a good life. My true and only family through my whole life was Bo, me, and my kids. Without my family, worthless, with a cursor error saying it could never be replaced. And with that said, I come to a couple of quotes that I wrote in the book, and I have them against my wall. Actually, this is one of them, and it says this: because of metamorphosis, a caterpillar that moves slowly in the night turns into a butterfly that takes flight fluttering all through the day and the night. And when it comes to suicide, if I were to give a logo to suicide, I would put a butterfly there, not the semicolon stamp, because it is a true metamorphosis of the human soul. You can get to a point and be in a cocoon and not be walking and wanting to fly, and you can't see it, but then one day, the day that you may not be here anymore, like you could wake up and have wings and be flying, and that is real. We could be Tinkerbell on a wire, or we could be a butterfly in the sky. Who knows what we can morph into? The sky's the limit, and God is great. Our imagination is infinite. And so I believe in us talking about mental illness, and I just dedicate this to my mother and all people who have gone through it or are suffering through it, because there is a way out, and it is not through what the devastation of suicide is. There are lifetimes that we have, whether we're on the physical planet or not. Our energy is going to transcend somewhere. And if you believe that your consciousness still exists, there is something to hold on to. If you can't believe in God and your consciousness is that loud voice in the back of your head telling you all day long the truth of what it wants and what it needs. And the people who are suffering need to be able to listen to that. If they're crying, if they're raging, if they're out of control, who gives a fuck? If they can hear that and they say, I need help, it's serious and it's something to be looked at and it's something that can be changed. So with that, I really hope that you are all creating every single day, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's gardening or taking care of your pets, or the way that you eat, the way that you exchange love. Art changes the world, the environment around you every single day. You know, when you see something beautiful, it inspires you, or something that you read that gives you an epiphany. All of these things are art. And if we are expressing from ourselves what our purpose is and we're creating throughout that, then we have a lot of medicine to share. And that medicine is greater than anything that we can get in a store or a hospital, even from a plant or root. The written word, the spoken word is a real powerful thing. And if we can connect with those that feel that they have no way out, or those that are overwhelmed dealing with those that are suffering, we can help each other. And so I love you so much. And that's exactly why I wanted to do this tonight, because I believe that we are possible. It's not impossible, it's impossible. And everything about that is magic to me, because we can create all these new realities and realms and not harm ourselves and progress into a higher consciousness. And that's what I want. And so with that said, I love my mama very, very, very much. This is for her and for my children and everybody to know that sharing is really, truly caring. We need to be able to have a community where people feel safe and they can talk. So within that, thank you so much. I love you, Mom, very, very, very much. You are my reason for being. And God bless you all in any struggling. It gets better. You can find a way, I promise you. If there's a will, there's a way. Peace. Won't.